Hello and welcome to episode 48 of the Foundry Roundtable, podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your tame Foundry author, Drogan1701, your award-winning tame Foundry author, as the guys insist on calling me. With me is man responsible for yesterday's koala jailbreak at the San Diego Zoo, Greendragoon.
Koalas are cuddling, except other people.
Just watch out for drop bears, apparently. And then we have air guitar virtuoso Markhawkman.
All right.
And world-renowned pineapple smuggler Hippiejohn.
Why do you always give away like my criminal past when you're giving me away? You're like, they get to do cool things like play with koalas. Me, I get on a weird plane and smuggle pineapples.
That's because we don't know nothing about your non-criminal past.
I did some nice things. It wasn't all crime.
It wasn't all crime. Well, we'll get to the non-crime things later on. We got plenty more episodes in our future. And our guest tonight is Foundry author, very much a big KDF author, actually, which is great. SirBoulevard.
Nice to be here, guys.
We're glad to have you. SirBoulevard, of course, joined us on the after show a couple times now, so we're glad to have him on the actual show.
Well, the pleasure's mine.
And I want to start tonight giving out a shout out to Corin Nemec, who is the actor who plays Jonas Quinn on season 6 of Stargate SG-1. He favorited our tweet a couple weeks ago that we weren't going to have a show that week. So thanks for giving us a little attention there.
And if you are listening,
he favorited that we weren't going to have a show. I don't know if that's the right kind of attention.
I don't know.
We'll
got a favorite. I got a favorite from a celebrity. I'm just, cool.
Right.
And
maybe that just means we're Jonas Quinn disapproved, but Daniel Jackson approved.
For the record, I liked Jonas Quinn.
I did too. Now, Corin Nemec himself is sort of a strange guy if you follow his tweets, but strange in a good way, in a fun way.
Yeah, well, he's been in recovery from an accident recently.
Yeah, he did get in an accident recently. It's a car accident, I think.
Maybe he has more time to listen to podcasts.
I wonder if that means
maybe he plays Star Trek Online.
I was going to say,
cool.
Yeah.
He plays Stowe.
Hey, well, and if he doesn't, you should give it a try. It's awesome. Oh, if only there was a Stargate MMO.
Yeah.
We took one of their devs. It's good.
From the failed Stargate, what was it called?
Stargate Worlds.
Universes? Or Worlds?
Yeah.
Something like
that.
It was on Universe.
It's kind of sad that the way it died, but
It's kind of sad the way the whole show died.
A little bit, yeah. So unfortunately, I mean, we're getting revivals of Heroes and what's the other one?
Don't start with your meh about my favorite sci-fi ever. Don't start with your meh.
It's not a bad show. I like it. I'm just not wild about it.
Farscape, I don't know. Farscape touched every perfect sci-fi nerve for me. So to this day remains my favorite. Which pushed when it came out, it pushed Star Trek down to my third favorite sci-fi. So
to wrap up the portion of the show that has nothing to do with the Foundry.
We do have some news, so let's get on to the news.
News.
There is a Foundry Bonus Weekend in our future, apparently. Triple patch notes, which went live today, which, of course, as we all know, may become holodeck patch notes very soon. We'll keep an eye on that. Say that bonus experience and Foundry weekends have been added to the calendar. All skill points and expertise rewards are doubled during the bonus experience weekend event. That should be good. All qualifying Foundry missions will reward a choice of reputation marks as an additional reward during bonus Foundry weekend event.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Always great to see some attention put to the Foundry.
Yeah, sounds good to
Any
me.
kind of attention is a really good thing.
The other little piece of news that I picked up on this week was something that for our Frost report, which is the black space around the Briar Patch Research interior map has been reduced. So anyone building in that black space in the map might now have geometry that's suddenly outside the boundaries. We've been told that building this way is not supported, and we do run the risk of things like this happening. Kind of why they change it, I don't know. Maybe it's unintentional.
Yeah, maybe they're cleaning up maps and it just trickles back into the Foundry.
Could be.
Well, I noticed that in the triple notes today they have more space available for us, so I think they're compressing everything, and they're just getting rid of excess data. So that black space is probably just going away to make more room on the server.
That's kind of what I'm thinking too. Is that there's.
I don't think so. Just because
they've got to be saving something there. They've got to be doing something that benefits them by getting rid of that black space. And the only thing I can think of that they'd be getting rid of is some kind of data that is just not used elsewhere in any way.
Yeah. I would say this is a great time to plug, if any cryptic dev is listening, that we could really use a nice empty black interior map just for us to build our little
with
space
no
castles.
geometry in it.
No geometry.
No geometry.
Just put an invisible box for us to be inside, and we'll make it really large and let us go to town.
And Frost did say request again. I mean, I think, and that request has been made many times, so he'd say he'd pass that on again.
It always kind of makes me wonder all of the ways that we use the Foundry that aren't in the way that the Foundry was ever designed.
Of which there are many.
Yeah. I mean, how is a dev supposed to know what it is we need when we don't use things the way it was originally designed?
P. Sutherland says, get rid of Tovan Kev. That'll save you some space.
I told him to tell Tovan to stop eating Twinkies.
Oh.
I like
It's true,
Tovan
though.
too.
Think of how everybody has a copy of that data. It's a very true thing. Every player in the game that plays a Romulan has a copy of that data footprint that they have to save.
Yeah, but it's no different than
even my
another
Hirogen-
bridge officer.
Even my Hirogen has Tovan Kev. He's just a cabin boy on that crew.
Oh, that just gave me a bad image.
No doubt.
Well, your guy is a Hirogen, so obviously he needs some prey.
Yeah, they just keep him around to hunt him when things get slow.
So you put him in the forums?
But not so great Tovan hunt.
Goes right up there with the great Klingon Tribble hunt.
I smell a Foundry mission. Based on that.
I have a feeling I've just opened a world of hurt for Tovan Kev.
No, that's just the zag he got to the chat room. That's what you're smelling.
Didn't someone actually make a mission that's let's kill Tovan Kev?
I wouldn't be surprised.
I started one. I actually put just to see what death traps would look like. I made 3 various Tovan Kev death traps. One, you beamed him into a cave and then beamed in a whole bunch of nasty monsters to eat him. One, you had him stand on a platform and then like 800 feet up in the air or something, and then made the platform disappear and watched him fall to his doom. And the other one was put him in a firing line in front of a bunch of enemy Romulans.
Oh, I don't get it. I mean, I get the Franklin Drake killing missions. I mean, Franklin Drake is a douche, but I mean, it's not like Tovan Kev ever actually did anything to try and annoy people. It's just kind of the unfortunate.
I actually like Franklin Drake better than Tovan Kev.
Well, do you get me? I love Franklin Drake as a character.
Well, the NPC that I really want to die is that guy who runs that freighter shop in Sirius Sector Space.
Mud.
Yeah.
Mud's grandchild or whatever.
You're absolutely right, Patrick.
Kazak says Slamek must die.
Absolutely agree. Slamek can go eat it.
Traitorous coward.
Well, no. I know
that's right. Slamek, we never see him die at all.
No.
Well, here's my theory on that. The Iconians put him into one of their gateways, sent him to the JJ universe, and then he died from lens flares because it was too bright in there.
I like that. I like that theory.
That's a good one. Well, why don't we move it along to what we've been working on? And why don't we start with our guest, SirBoulevard?
Oh, right now I'm working on the third part of my Honor of series, Honor of the Empire, which is, if you guys haven't played Honor of Frasa, it's the current KDF Spotlight mission. Basically, the storyline is it starts off with you being sent to Farasa, which at this point it's not yet part of the Empire. It's because Cryptic has actually written it so that they're kind of in or out, and it's not clear which. So I wrote the story. Start off, you go there before they've joined, and there's something going on with this exiled clan, and they make genetically mutated epos and nanovs and stuff like that that you have to kill. And so that mission ends, but there's a little teaser that they killed an Orion ambassador. And so I started the second mission, which just came out, Honor of Orions, where you're basically sent off and you find out, no, you didn't quite finish killing them off. That was a pretty small force you easily killed, wasn't it? And it ends on the cliffhanger of they've incited a rebellion from the conquered races of the Empire. And so what I'm working on now is I'm doing this big, epic battle on Kronos where you've got Ganaldans and this Shiasi clan of Farasans are basically taking the fight to the Empire inside its own borders. And the Empire gets shot up to hell and back again. And what happens is I'm writing the story so that it ends with you take them out, but the KDF got so heavily damaged, it's the Gorn and Orions and the Frostons who are now doing security while they're rebuilding. And Ambassador Satas takes advantage of the opportunity to kind of force the hand of the Empire to finally say, hey, you got to give these other guys equal rights finally, because we could bomb the planet right now. To kind of fill in that cryptic plot hole about why are non-KDF players treated equally.
Now, am I right in thinking that this series of missions is sort of focusing on each sort of non-Klingon race in the KDF as we go along?
Sort of. It definitely has a focus on the non-Klingon Klingon characters. The first one definitely had a focus on Farasans, and the fact was it was a wide open space because they're not the Kzinti anymore. So I went, okay, I can actually work with that. I got something I can work on, create a new culture, work within what Cryptic has given me, and fill it out. And then when it came time to do part two, I wanted to kind of subvert that expectation. I wanted people to go in and be like, oh, we're going to learn about the Orions. Well, the Orions don't tell anyone anything. They're so secretive, they're not going to tell anyone, even their own people, what's going on. But they are involved in the mission in the first and final maps. But you don't realize they were involved in the first map, and I'm leaving that out until you guys actually play it because there's an important NPC who's in disguise in that first map. And it turns out, oh, it's this character who's very important in Stowe lore, but we've never met her before. And so,
Intriguing.
But the rest of the storyline is dealing with the return of the Shiasi clan. That pitiful fleet that you and a bunch of NPCs just easily kicked the butts out of at the end of Farasa was nothing. That was a distraction. And then Honor of the Empire is, it's a lot more dialogue. You guys, last episode, were in the cafe, and that from the beginning and the end of that mission. And that's basically you have a conversation with Satas after being on patrol, waiting for the rest of the representatives of the High Council to get back to Kronos. And so then there's a lot of dialogue, but there's also a huge amount of battle sequences and seeing this huge attack on Kronos that just wasn't the Klingon Empire basically incited by oppressing non-Klingon races and having to deal with the fallout from that.
Definitely sounds interesting because I think that's something that's not explored enough in game already. Is these other races within the KDF?
I always kind of figured that the reason for non-Klingon KDF captains was similar to the reason of why Federation was putting lieutenants in command. Is that it's a shortage of manpower.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's not actually the case though, because in the new Klingon storyline, I think the Pacific character, the captain, is given this honor because he ends up exposing the House of Torg in the new early missions. and having actually ingraced himself to the House of Markhawk and House of Jimpok at the same time. And so it was just a case of, okay, you're the one guy who's completely neutral in this whole inter-house politics. We're going to give you a little bit of leeway. But, there's a bunch of other NPCs like the Gorn warden in charge of the prison on Kronos, or Commander Ninyan, who is the Frozen scientist in Sphere of Influence, who are clearly having a lot of respect for their positions, and it's not explained why. What we do know, though, is the Gorn in Kestel's backstory is the Gorn actually have a seat on the High Council. It's a non-voting seat, but during the Battle of Gorn, it's a seat. That's never happened before. And it happened during the Siege of Gornar. Something happened when the shields dropped and they went down there. When the battle was over, the Gorn kept partial autonomy. They got to keep their homeworld in their control, and they got a seat.
What happened was Slathis fought Jimpok in a duel, and Jimpok was so impressed by it that after he beat Slathis, he decided not to kill him.
Yeah.
And like you said, to let him have a seat on the council.
Yeah.
Now, is that written somewhere? Is it Path to 2409 or DOF missions or what?
Path to 2409 and the STO tie-in novel, The Needs of the Many.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also one with the Orions that Milani Dayon signed the signed the Orions with the same condition, but their seat on the High Council isn't filled for some reason. So there's a hole there, and I wanted to explore that.
All of their representatives keep mysteriously dying.
Well, she's the only representative, and actually when she signed in, she did it under the guise of being a slave girl for Hassan.
Who is dead?
Who is dead now?
Yeah, he's dead now.
We killed him.
Or locked up in a Romulan prison. One of the two.
Yeah, canonically he's out.
And I really wish the Kestrel's backstory was explored more in this game.
Well, that's
in ways that isn't just tiny little bit of it in a DOF mission dialogue thing.
Here and
Yeah,
there.
in ways that
in ways that we actually go out and play.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I like doing over on the KDF side, because they haven't touched any of that. Whereas the Starfleet stuff tends to get touched on eventually, and then you're like, oh, now I have to rewrite everything.
Has anyone taken on the Gorn Rebellion yet?
That's what I'm doing, actually.
Oh.
Because Satos is actually a deuterotagonist for my series.
I'm writing a mission that ties into it, but doesn't. It's in the planning stages. I don't have any real ideas, but the Gorn Rebellion and the Gorn Separatists really appeal to me as a storytelling spot to go explore.
Well, have you noticed something about the Gorn Rebellion? If you talk to Satos now, he doesn't mention it at all.
I know.
So
I've
that
seen
makes
that. Yeah.
So I kind of wrote that into my series. Like, he was for that, and now he's realizing, oh, working with the Empire, we're actually in a kind of a position. I'm gonna politically maneuver us to get up the chain of command.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of like that, using the Foundry to fill in some of these gaps. Obviously it's just sort of our interpretation of what's happening in these story gaps, but can be fun. I mean, I spent a few hours completely outlining my possible Hirogen series, which is basically the story of how there are Hirogen running around in the Beta Quadrant when they're adult quadrant species. You're going to start out there. Your hunts are going to, this is going to be for people like me who are RPing a Hirogen character with the ships and the armor and all that. You're going to start out. It's going to be a historical thing. You're going to start out in the Delta Quadrant. Your hunts are going to take you all the way to the Beta Quadrant, and then where you're going to encounter Sela, and she's going to use you to take back power because she was exiled a while back, actually before the destruction of Romulus. She was exiled, so you're going to encounter her, enter into an alliance with her, and then because she's Sela, she's going to betray you after she takes power, and so that's why you have Hirogen ships running around helping the Feds or the Romulans or whatever.
That's good. And luckily, we have Sila's asset.
Yes, exactly. That's why I chose to do it that way.
We do not
Otherwise-
have Sela. We have Romulan Ensign 03, who has been told she looks very much like Sela.
And
I miss zero tagging assets.
What can I say? It's really the shoulder capes that give away the resemblance.
well,
And the
also,
lack of ridges.
it's worth remembering that this particular Foundry asset was updated in Legacy of Romulus to have the new updated appearance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we know it.
Mhm.
All of those Foundry assets that have the really silly asset description, like this Klingon loves tea or whatever. Yeah, there's some really silly descriptions in there for various NPC contacts, and I really think Zero was responsible for a whole lot of those. So.
Well, you can't blame her. It has to be boring trying to make descriptions for all of them.
It's true.
You should read the ones for the Alachi. Those are hilarious.
Oh, they
Oh my
are.
God.
Oh, Galachi
The-
are funny.
Especially the Dalek one. Exterminate.
Exterminate. Yeah.
Yeah. Foundry authors, you could waste an entire evening going through all of the description
really
of
can.
NPCs.
You really can.
I think my favorite is that Cardassian who's named after Kira.
Pax Federatica says it's actually Romulan Ensign 04, not 03. Sorry,
Well,
guys. I thought there
Realm
was
Time says it's 03.
It's 04.
Pack says it's 04.
It's
Don't
04.
matter.
I use that.
That's for sure.
It's one of the
Yeah.
two.
Hakiv is
It's-
there too.
Yep.
But you know who's interesting? They messed up when they imported over. Jonik is in there, but she has the wrong model.
Neat.
Well, that's what I've been working on. Mark, have you been in the Foundry much?
I haven't been able to find time to do much. I did tinker with one or two things though, but nothing significant.
Okay. How about you, Dragoon?
Fortunately, no. Real life has been kicking my butt lately.
Which we should say is part of the reason why the previous show has not been out yet.
Yeah.
other than the live show, of course. We will get that up as quick as we can. Let's see. We just have one mission review, I think, tonight. We were going to talk about.
I have been working on
Sure.
something.
Oh,
Unlike all of you
Hippiejohn.
guys. Yeah, I was going to be like,
I missed you
unlike
there.
all of you guys.
Well,
I
good. That
actually
gives me time to get my notes again.
Yeah, I actually this week it's not like I worked on one mission and I got a lot done on any one thing, but I got good work done on my Borg map for Mayhem 3, which is I'm just not enjoying putting the map together, so it's taking a really long time. But I made a good amount of progress on that this week, and as I said, I started putting together that map that I was making using the the swampy outdoor map. I actually came up with an idea for a mission that I really like that ties in with the Gorn rebellion. Um, that it, or the Gorn separatists rather, that I think I'm going to present first as a KDF mission, where as a loyal KDF captain, you become aware of this kind of cell of Gorn separatists, and then this KDF captain has to go deal with it in their very KDF way. Then following that, it's not a huge long mission that I have in mind, but I want to do this tie-in where you play the KDF mission first and see how things get to where they are, and then you play this Federation mission where you're given a mission to go meet with some Gorn separatists. And I want you to have played the KDF mission so that when you arrive at the place that you arrive at the same planet, and I want the two missions to share the same final map kind of thing, so that when you arrive at that final map, you know from the view of the KDF. So as the Federation player, you're like, I already know what's going to happen, but I want it to be an interesting, both things going to this same place at the end. I'm looking forward to doing that. It's a little bit inspired by one of my favorite writers, a guy named Grant Morrison. If people don't know Grant Morrison's work, then you should really get some Grant Morrison in your life. He's a great writer. So yeah, that's the things I've been working on this week. I really beat out a lot of the details of that story of how it's going to work. That was, even though it wasn't directly editing something in the Foundry, I did a little bit of good amount of work on a map in the Foundry, but I also came up with a way for two stories to work that I'm really pleased with. So that's what I was doing this week.
Well, if you want the costume for Satas and Slathis I made, you're welcome to have them.
I'll probably, I might ask you for those. I'll talk to you about what I'm doing later.
Starbase UGC has a costume sharing thread on its forum.
A new one. They do.
So
people are trying to convince me to put the Mayhems in there.
It depends on if you want to give people your costumes or not. Sometimes maybe you don't.
The other day in a chat room, I was like, I'm only going to give these to certain people. And then I was like, well, and that includes this person and this person and this person and this person and, well, this person. Basically, anyone who wanted to put the Mayhems in their mission, I would be like, please, well, what should I do with them? I don't care. I'm basically an exposure whore in that regard. If someone sees Miranda and the Mayhems, or just Miranda Mayhem out in a mission somewhere, it may direct them toward my missions, and I'll be like, yay, more plays. So I don't care. If you want to use them, ask me. Hey, put them in your missions. So
I think it would be cool to have sort of a lot of us have created admirals, with pretty much the purpose, the only purpose of just giving orders to the player to start the mission.
Right.
It'd be great to have like a library of those, so we're all using the same bunch of admirals, and people get that sort of continuity across missions.
That'd be kind of neat. I think that would be actually really neat.
Because I've got one that works. That's the head of the Advanced Starship Design Bureau, and I've got one.
Right, and how many people? Yeah, how many
people
have used that guy? But when it comes up, suddenly you can be like, "Hey, look, let's use this one."
And somebody,
Exploration admirals
might only get one player in 100 that we realize, hey, I've taken orders from this guy before.
Yeah,
but for that one player, that'd be cool.
That one player at 100 is going to have a great experience with that, and that makes it all worth it.
So I'm all for stuff like that. I just wish we had the costume importer back.
Oh, I know.
Sigh.
So I believe we do have one mission review tonight. Mark and I both played Amicus Apparatus by Kortaag, who was our guest a couple weeks ago. So I want to start off with something real quick about this mission, is that he had some vital story data to get you started that was in the mission summary, but was not in the opening dialogue. So I don't know. I want to ask your guys' thoughts about doing it that way, because I have a bad habit of not reading the summary before I start the mission, if I know I'm already going to be playing that person's mission, if I'm looking for one specifically.
I have already run into that problem a lot when I wrote Honor of Frasa, because I stupidly put only the where to start the mission in there. So I've kind of learned, whatever you put in there, if you put it in there, put it in the big bold text at the very top, so people will go, oh, that's important, I should read it.
Well, I mean, my thought is put it in both, because I just from reading the opening dialogue, I didn't understand why I was going somewhere. I knew where to go. I didn't know why I was going there. I had to go back and read the summary that you see when you're searching in the Foundry search interface to understand what I was going to be doing.
I'm of the opinion that as strange as it sounds and as counterintuitive as it sounds, you need to repeat yourself from whatever you said in the summary in your mission giver dialogue as well. And it's because people will use one or the other. They're not going to use both, and you can't count on them combining the knowledge they got from the summary and the mission giver to put it together. People are going to use one or the other.
And even if you want to, a lot of us want to keep story details further down the line under wraps until we actually get to it. So like, in my Mirror Universe mission, I have the summary, which tells a little bit about what the whole mission is going to be like. And in the opening dialogue, it just gives you a reason to be going where you're going to start with.
Well, for me, I typically just write a description of the mission and mention the location of the starting point in the summary, and don't put anything really important in it.
Yeah, I've kind of learned to do the same thing. Although if I have something that I need to portray immediately, what I'll do is I'll add in another pop-up dialogue to appear right after the mission giver, in case there is something important that needs to be portrayed.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because I mean that very first one, I don't think you even get a button. All you have is accept or not, right?
Yeah.
But in any case, I mean, I had to go back in this one. I didn't know why I was going anywhere. So I mean, I would, in this case, advise him to add a little bit more to that opening dialogue, so that the player doesn't miss any vital story information. Let's see. In this mission, it's been a little while since I played it, so I'm trying to think back to what the plot was. Essentially, you were going to go investigate some unusual things for the Romulan Republic. It's not a specifically Romulan mission for Romulan players, but you are helping the Republic in this one. They've got this Dideridex that's been a prototype science vessel, but it's not ready to go by itself, so you go in its place. He has this absolutely fantastic bridge that he made for it, because, of course, we don't have any of Cryptic's Romulan bridges in the Foundry. And I want to say that he followed one of my cardinal rules, which is that if you're going to build an impressive map, make sure you have enough objectives and enough things to do so the player is able to run around and explore it and enjoy it. Which he did. You spend a lot of time on that bridge, and I think that's a good thing.
In his case, though, he also threw in a bunch of optional stuff that you don't need to do, but it's interesting to do.
And he did that very interestingly, too, which is he had some sort of holographic view screens that you could look at different things on, which is very clever, I thought. And I'm not sure I could describe it to do it justice, but you're able to look at board ships and things like that. He had some odd things where you put NPC titles. We didn't used to be able to do this, but in the Foundry dialogue window, when it pops up, you can give the NPC a name, and it appears above the dialogue. And he actually put like little phrases in there, and it reminded me of the way, if anybody has played Mass Effect, the way the Elcor race speaks, where every line of dialogue they speak, they start with a couple words that describe their tone, because the Elcor, their voices are completely toneless. So they'll start with, dejected resignation, and then they'll go on with the rest of their dialogue. And I think that's kind of what he was going for, but it was very strange. I'm not sure I would do that personally.
Kind of reminds me of HK-47 from Knights
Yep.
of the Old Republic.
Made by the same company, of course. Let's see. There was one thing in a space map. He had a strange transition where you do an impulse out animation before you go to warp, which made no sense to me, and I would get rid of that. The impulse out animation is kind of a cool animation, I will admit, but since you were going to warp anyway, he did on that particular space map. He did one of those things where you warp to a couple systems within the same map, which was I always enjoy doing that. Let's see. He used a lot of Nebula FX, and had an issue on one of the maps where the screen just went really white because it makes like everything bloom really heavily. And I didn't have my bloom settings higher than normal. They're just on normal, and it just whited out the whole screen. So, you know, I consider some different FX there.
Maybe
Yeah.
don't bring a red matter.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, don't go JJ style on all this. You know, lens flare and bloom in moderation. Let's see. There was an opening space map that didn't really add very much to the mission. I thought, because it was just, you know, it was like a couple lines of dialogue, and then you beamed to that Romulan bridge. I'd rather have you travel out in sector space to a place and then just say, I'm ready to beam you right to the Romulan bridge, sir. And bam, you're there.
You have to be careful when doing that, though, because sometimes those transitions, we don't get to customize them if you have to beam from inside a custom map to back out to sector space or to a social zone. And then you're left with a random piece of pop-up that says, go to next map, that you can't control.
Well, in this case, because the opening space map that I'm saying he should get rid of. So, I mean, this is the first custom map that you get to. So I think if you put the door, the opening door to the Foundry mission way out somewhere in Romulan space, because we have some doors out there, you know, you travel to it in sector space, then you start the mission, and I think that would work better than how he has it right now. Because you want to eliminate any of those map transitions you possibly can. Let's see, he had some cool looking aliens, I thought. I think all too often I get stuck just using canon species, and I forget to create my own, which is fun. I really encourage people to do that, because, you know, there's a lot of interesting life out there. And Cryptic's alien creator, you can really make some crazy looking and cool looking stuff in it. Let's see, he had a neat sequence of going around a planet and listening to transmissions from the surface of a pre-warp civilization. I thought that was really very well done. Let's see. I ran into some issues with some of the combat, because he had a succession of captain level mobs spawning right on top of you. And I was, you know, in a reasonably geared character, but not maybe completely well geared, and especially not in buffs. And God, I just died over and over and over again. So he might, you know, either give the player some space, you know, have them not spawn on top of the player, or have them move, you know, what am I trying to say here? Make them not captain mobs. I don't know.
Well, one thing to remember about that particular fight is that it is actually possible, depending on the dialogue choices, to not fight anyone.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, boy, did I make the wrong choice.
I actually ended up playing it twice because I ran into an issue on the ground map, or the last ground map, I should say. And so I had to drop it and replay it again. And the second time I did different dialogue choices on that, and I didn't end up fighting anyone.
Oh, wow. Well, then I congratulate him on that. But I would also maybe make those fights a little bit easier.
He also added
there's a lot of them, and I'm not sure about the Breen group, but
that was the toughest one for me.
He may or may not have put in 2 Breen mobs. I'm not sure exactly. I just remember that there was a lot of bodies on the floor when I was done with them.
There's also something in that map, because I did play that mission too a long time ago. If you play it in a team, when you face that Rogue Federation cruiser that's saucer separated, you get the saucer to fight as well if you have 2 people.
I assume he must have reskinned one of the other mobs in that NPC group so that the saucer spawns.
Yeah, it was something he did specifically for 2-player.
Because that's something you always want to do. I mean, I think probably a lot, and probably the majority of people play Foundry missions solo, but not everybody. So, I mean, if you put down a mob and you reskin it as something, you want to reskin the rest of the mobs in that group, just in case they spawn.
Yep.
When people are playing as group. So the sort of elephant in the room for this particular mission is the jumping puzzle. You don't see a lot of these. He obviously put a ton of work into this to figure out exactly where you could run, because I think some of these objects are baked into the map. What it is essentially it's a sort of wide open map. There's lots of rocks, and there's some of those colony connectors connecting the rocks. You got to figure out how to.
The base map is one of the mech ground ones, I think.
Yeah, it's got those moving arches and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun to walk around in, but I found myself falling too many times, and this is where I have to confess I did not actually finish the mission because it was getting really, really late at night. And I was falling on that jumping puzzle, and I was like, I just can't finish.
Yeah, I warned him about that because I was in one of the first.
It's really hard. The first time I tried it, I actually couldn't figure out how to complete it because one of the things actually requires you to do a running jump to get up onto a ledge that you're standing next to.
So this is one of those cases, I think, where it's a really, really great idea. Everything I've heard about it, I know he's called it the parkour puzzle, and people that have talked about all the running and jumping and all of that. It's one of those that sounds to me that like I haven't played it myself yet, but it sounds like it's a really great idea that is perhaps designed just a little bit too hard for your average player who doesn't like jumping puzzles necessarily, but for someone who does love jumping puzzles and old platformers, it's going to really, possibly appeal to their sense of I have to like figure this out. The problem is that that's not your common person who's going to end up playing the mission. And so
that's something you might want to warn people of up front. I mean, I wouldn't say necessarily dumb it down.
There's a big yellow disclaimer in the summary that says, "Warning: this mission has extreme whatever." I forget the exact.
And I knew it going in, of course, because I talked to him about it, as well as the disclaimer. So that's a good thing to warn people when you have something like that in. So if they're just not into it, they know to kind of stay away.
They don't do it and low rate you for something that isn't that you're being honest about. You're like, look, this is a jumping puzzle. So yeah, if you don't like those, exactly.
Well, what I thought he really should have done for that puzzle was when you reached a certain point, there'd be a ramp that takes you back up to where you had completed that puzzle. That way, every time you made a jump, if you fell down, you could get right back up to where you started, where you fell off.
that would have been a very nice thing to have, especially once you get to section, I forget whether it's 8 or so, where the things we're on are like 100 feet up, and if you make a single misstep, it takes you like 10 minutes just to get back to where you were.
Yeah, no,
that could definitely spawn a ramp once you get to that point. Just use a reach marker and spawn in some ramps up to there. That'd be a good idea. So that you don't really lose a lot of progress.
Yeah, I did that one. It took me like I think 5 times to actually complete that puzzle.
Yeah, and obviously I didn't complete it, so one of these days I will get back in there and try and finish it. But anyway, I did think it was a good mission. I mean, it was well written. My only real complaint would be that it takes quite a long time to get to the jumping puzzle, which I assume is one of the final maps, right?
Yeah, I think it's the second to last map.
Yeah, it takes a long time to get there, and if you've fall a couple times, it's going to take you a long time to get through that. So I mean, I may pick up the pace in the beginning parts a little bit if I were him.
So a question is the jumping puzzle kind of like, is that like the big selling point? This has a cool jumping puzzle on it. Like, does
Not
that
really, but it's a major feature of the mission.
Yeah.
But the real selling point to the mission is understanding the story behind why you have to do the jumping puzzle.
okay?
Because there's a really long explanation for what the planet is and why you have to go through so much effort to get to this thing way up on top of one of the spires.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's not just sort of extraneous and thrown in for no reason.
I was going to say, well, I was just, if that's like the main, if that's like a really big selling point of the thing is that, there's this jumping puzzle that's really cool, then I would, say that, my suggestion would be get to it faster based on what you're saying there. Is if that's the big, if that's a good selling point for the thing, then, get there.
And it is. And I'm saying, get there a little bit faster, but you don't want to compromise the rest of the story. Otherwise, it's sort of... get to my cool jumping puzzle. Just F through everything else. We don't want people to do that.
Mashing F to go through the dialogue is why you end up having to fight all of those Voth, Hippiejohn, and Breen.
I'm trying to remember. Wasn't there like another puzzle in there? Well, like a logic puzzle.
It was a dialogue puzzle, and you had to make the right choices and activate like 8 little things in sequence or something like that.
I hated that puzzle. I thought it was worse than the jumping puzzle.
I didn't have issues with it because I'm one of those people that when I see one of those puzzles, I'm like, okay, so what happens if I click this button? Nope. Okay, next button. Nope.
Trial and error.
Okay, next console. Click. Got that one. Next.
It didn't help that it was also all in technobabble.
I actually like the use of technobabble for that console thing.
I didn't mind it. If I were him, maybe I'd cut it down a little bit to maybe 2 or 3 of these things, just so we can get
it was a bit much
things moving.
Yeah, that was where I spent most of the time in that mission, I think, because I couldn't understand what the puzzle needed me to do.
But I certainly appreciate when somebody puts that kind of work into a puzzle.
Definitely.
Because obviously he must have spent a lot of time on that.
Yeah, he definitely spent a lot of time on that. It was overkill. He probably didn't need to spend as much time as he did.
Probably.
Well, it's a lot like the way I do some of my maps where I, go and build all sorts of stuff that really has absolutely no practical value in the mission. I mean, because when I did the Beta Rana incident, I came up with this really cool thing of making Tholian living quarters by carefully positioning. Well, this is one of those things you can only do in a Sky Castle map or a map that has very carefully placed platforms above the terrain surface. Because what I did is I took this giant thing, it's a stone mushroom that happens to have a little hollow area with crystals inside it in the base. I positioned it so that the hollow is right at the edge of the stone platform, so you can just walk off the stone platform into this hollow area where when you go inside, you're actually below the level of the stone platform. And then I never did anything with it in the mission.
Well, I was going to say, I honestly think as authors, we spend way more time. I've spent so much time trying to solve a problem that no one ever commented on. And I like to believe it's because I spent time to try to solve like that problem. But the truth is, no one else was looking at it as deeply as I was as the author of the map.
Well, and that's just going to be natural, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But I think also there's times where you have to step back and think, turn that off for a second and go, okay, what's the average person going to do? Like what I'm doing in Empire right now. I originally planned for a 6-map space battle over Kronos that was filled to the max with mobs, and I realized no, that's going to be too long, so I've cut it down to 4 to narrow down so I could have a couple extra maps for exposition at the end.
Well, one thing I like to do for big battles is make it so that it's not just the player shooting at 50 ships. Make it so that there's a bunch of ally ships to keep
Oh
the
yeah.
enemy ships from deciding to eat you.
Oh yeah, I actually got in trouble with that because in honor of Frosta, I had too many friendly ships, and the first space battle was over like that.
Balancing those
But
battles is definitely, it takes some trial and error.
I don't know. I think
Mm.
this kind of gets back to the thing, though, is that ultimately, as authors, we're kind of building our missions for ourselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of times, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you real quick, one technique I did to sort of draw out the big final battle in one of my missions was I had, Space Battle Part 1, and then at the end of that is like, Captain, while our shields were down, they beamed in boarding parties. So you go and fight the boarding party, and then at the end it's, Captain, they have reinforcements coming. So you go back and fight another big space battle. So it's all sort of part of this same battle, but it's over 3 maps.
In Diplomacy in the Gamma Quadrant, the hook for the space battle was that the founders tell the Klingon High Council to send a representative to this planet using a specific method of travel. Then the High Council decides that they don't want to do it that way and have you use a transwarp gate to get there, which pisses off this race called the Rekarthar, who sends swarms of what are basically frigates to attack the system. But since the Rekarthar are just attacking you in a mad frenzy, they don't form up into a big blob to attack. They just attack you in groups as soon as they get there. So you kill a few groups, a few more warp in, you kill them, etc.
yeah.
Yeah, making it in stages like that helps. Anyway, I do recommend this mission to folks, especially if they do like jumping puzzles, because it is a good one, if long, perhaps, and difficult. But if you're a fan of jumping puzzles, you are no stranger to long and difficult.
True.
I thought the jumping puzzles were a lot of fun, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But
I do like them in other games. I mean,
I was going to say, fans of platformers will spend time. I'm a fan of platformer games. I spent a lot of time figuring some of those out.
So
I honestly got tired of platformer games after a while because, I used to play stuff like Mario and the Legend of Zelda a lot, and
Stickman, love Stickman.
Then later on, I started playing other games that had more thinking to them, and then when I go back and play one of those, I'm like, why am I bothering again?
It's one of those platformers are, once you figure them out and you train your muscle memory to press the jump button at the right time and all of that according to how fast your computer and processor moves, that once you figure all of that out and once you do it, your muscle memory and your timing, once you figure out a platformer, the only thing you can do is keep trying to do it faster. So you're right, but there is a bit of figuring it out that does take some work.
Well, also there's memorizing environmental hazards.
Yep.
One of the Men in Black games had this murderous level where the main environmental hazard, these things are basically giant laser beams that shoot clean all the way across the level at various times.
Are you
and
talking
guess
about
what
the Game
happened
Boy
if you were
one?
standing there?
Are you talking about the Game Boy Men in Black game?
Probably.
Yeah, I remember that level. That was a nightmare level.
Yeah.
I do wish we had some environmental things that can harm the player in this game.
Honestly, I loved
Foundry.
full screen. When I used to play platformers a lot, I would love those full level environmental hazards that you couldn't even see when it fired off at you, and you just had to realize when you had to react, kind of thing.
Yeah,
I loved those.
With the Men in Black game, you had a warning with those things because usually when you were making your way towards it, you would see it before it pulsed, and also there were these wide or I should say, suspiciously wide hallways that the giant laser beams traveled through, and they were the only open areas on the map.
I love what you just called those. That's an awesome name. These are the suspiciously wide hallways. Let's be careful here.
So that must mean all of the hallways in Stoke, because they're all suspiciously wide.
Well, they are designed by the Starfleet Corps of Engineers, and these are the people who can't get fuses right. I mean, you're walking in a suspiciously large everything.
These are the people that make all of the consoles so that they will explode at the drop of a hat.
And have fail safes that
they're
run
not
on power.
designed to do that. That's just an accident.
Okay,
Because
what about
unfortunately they made them out of explodium. It's very unstable.
Yeah, but how do you explain the fact that their fail safes require power? Their manual overrides require power. That's an actual plot point from a Voyager episode.
No doubt. And anyway, that is the end of that particular review. We did go off on a little bit of a tangent there. That's
seems to be a knife for it.
That's kind of what we do sometimes.
They're fun.
So let's move on to discussion topics. Greendragoon last time asked the question, now that the white object bug has been fixed and the truncation of the ice caves map has been fixed, what's the number one bug that we would love Cryptic to focus on? What is it? And I'm not entirely sure I have an answer, because I don't have anything that's pressing, that's holding me up. Looking at your list of bugs here, things that you haven't read, some of which are sort of design decisions that we might disagree with, like not having a next button in the mission, the thing only going up to 50. I think they designed that intentionally. We just think it sucks.
Fair enough, but yeah, it was.
One that you have here is space bridge officers and dialogue boxes appear as generic officers instead of player bridge officers.
Yes, and that would be my choice for number one. Basically, when you're playing through a Foundry mission, if you're on the ground and you bring up a dialogue box and use one of your space NPC bridge officers, a generic bridge officer will appear in its place.
I've actually noticed a similar issue with the Step Between the Stars mission, because
I was
I've
about
had
to point out,
on multiple occasions. I mean, I've never had this happen with my Romulan characters, except maybe have like one member, but it will, for some unknown reason, only use one or two bridge officers most of the time when my feds play it. I mean, I actually have on
what
one
Mark
occasion.
is bringing up is very true. It's happening in the main game too, so I don't think that it's a Foundry related bug.
Possibly not.
I suspect it might actually be related to that old bug where the game would forget which bridge officers you had slotted.
Yeah.
I mean, it may be that it's attempting to retrieve the data, and since it can't find it fast enough, it decides not to bother.
I'm pretty sure that's what it is, because that issue is actually affecting the in-game bridges. Like if you go to the Origin bridge and you haven't done a mission or anything, instead of having your bridge crew on there, it'll have just generic officers. So I think that's exactly what it is.
And there's a host of bugs related to your bridge officers that appear on the loading screen. Sometimes you'll get duplicate bridge officers. I got one.
I think that's a game bug. Yeah.
And I think some of what it is some of us don't have, when you're going on an away team, some people don't bring one of a particular profession, and if that's the dialogue you chose, that'll screw up.
It'll put a generic in there.
Yeah.
Interestingly
or the wrong boff in there.
Interestingly enough, one time I got one of those generic responses in game, like an alien that actually had a pretty weird looking appearance came up, and he had a name. He was like Ensign such and such, and I went, wow, that's really neat. And I immediately went and bought myself a blue level alien boff and went to the tailor and made him. And he joined the crew at that point.
Well,
So
that's where my character what was her name again? I forget what the actual name was, but well, I got a really cool alien buff on my Tribble Foundry character that I made copies of for several of my other characters just because it looks so.
Now let's see. Looking at some of the other bugs that we have here, we have, of course, the NPCs jumping to 000 coordinates in preview, which is very annoying and
Yeah.
prevents us from being able to really help design space combat sometimes, or makes it harder anyway.
Definitely.
We have one that I would really like to see fixed, which is custom sunlighting on space maps has no effect.
Yes.
Ah.
In the Shadows of Minus Part 1 used to have a couple of gas giants that would use the bloom. I'd use the bloom effect to make them look like suns. I had to cut that out because the space lighting broke.
Yeah, I'm having the same problem. Just for a warning for all you Klingon Foundry authors, if you try to use Kronos, because they've got the sun model built into the map, the sun lighting is coming from the other side of the planet.
yeah.
Well, I mean, stock maps still have their proper lighting, but yeah, adding suns to custom space maps does nothing.
Actually, one thing I noticed when I was tinkering in the Tribble Foundry a long time ago was that when using the Chronos space map, I noticed that the I guess you could say interactable size of the planet was actually considerably larger than the actual visible size of the planet.
Yep.
There's a couple of those sort of special ones. I think Andoria is like that too, or one of its moons anyway.
Yeah, the Andorian moon is okay. 'Cause I think that's the holdover from Cryptic's stuff because they need to have that wider zone because those are social maps, and so they need to have a larger zone for people to beam down.
Yeah.
Right, but on the social map, you don't have that as a zone you bump into. It's the interact radius.
And
So-
on one of the Andorian moons, it's actually the where you get the atmosphere effect as you get close to it is really far away from the moon itself. I noticed this when I was building one long time
One
ago.
thing to remember about Andoria is that Andoria is the moon. The gas, the big planet is a gas giant that's uninhabitable.
Well, the moon, the custom moon, or I should say the moon asset that's in the detail tab, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh,
Yeah, you're saying that
It is the moon.
that
Is what I'm
that
talking
shaking
about. Yeah, where the screen
lens
goes
flare.
white and it starts shaking. That's very, very far away from the asset.
Yeah.
Rogue Enterprise in the chat room brings up something which he says, to me, space lighting issues are super minor, which is, a good point to make because, we're not all going to agree on which bug is the worst.
So with him saying that, it kind of brings me to what I was saying for me, Axe. So the question was, what is now the number one bug for me? And there have only been two, uh, top priority bugs that I have run into, and those were the massive loading time that we were running into last year, and then the textureless assets that we just got fixed. Those two things, the reason they were primary bugs that I feel like had the ability to be called number one and like really needed people to look at those, were the reason for that is because every author was affected by those. Every single person trying to make missions had load times that were just minutes upon minutes upon minutes long. 10-minute load times for, when you've got to go in and out of a map to try to get things lined up. It made editing impossible for so many people, and I'm surprised that people who started using the Foundry at that time are still authoring. And then the textureless features on things, again, was one of those, everyone who's trying to edit a map is seeing completely white textureless blobs in the vague shape of the of the detail they're wanting to put on the map. So for me, I don't see any one bug like Rogue just pointed out. Lighting issues are super minor for him. Whereas for another author, they really want the lighting to work perfectly, and that's important to them.
Well, it is actually something I've noticed in some of my missions, but most of the
You've
time
noticed
it doesn't matter.
Let me finish my thought, Mark. Please let me finish my thought. I'm almost done with it. Is that it's that the bug has to be something for it to be super important like that, has to be something that is affecting all of the authors, whether we realize it or not. And in this case, the only thing that is affecting all of the authors is, as you pointed out, Drogon, it's something that is working as intended, that almost every Foundry author I know completely disagrees with. It's a design decision to limit their lists to the top 50 only and give us no choice to look past that. That design decision is killing the Foundry, and I think that is the number one thing that needs to be looked at and seriously considered by the people in charge. That's my opinion. That's my answer to your question, Dragoon.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about things that are going to affect everybody, I mean, I suppose probably the NPCs jump into 000 bug, that's affecting everybody.
Yep, that affects everybody.
Mood animations failing to show in the dialogue boxes.
That's game wide, though.
Is it?
That's not just a Foundry bug, yeah.
Well, see, then obviously it really needs to get fixed then.
Yeah, that's game wide.
Anything game wide ought to be.
Yeah,
ought to be on the top list.
Maybe
there's
that's
minor bugs.
Maybe that one is a fix. Maybe they heard us complaining about how the mood animations were over exaggerated and they toned it down.
They didn't just tone it down; they turned it off by accident.
Personally, for me, the bug that's bothering me is having the NPCs, if you have them on a kill, only show up for that kill animation, and that bothers me because for my missions, I've got these enemy NPCs behind invisible walls because I want you to talk to them first through an invisible object interact, and it makes me really annoyed.
So believe it or not, that has always been that way, and there's a reason behind it. It's basically a failsafe to prevent you from prematurely killing NPCs before their objective activates.
It seems like they could just put a flag that says invincible until this objective is in
No,
progress.
that would create worse issues.
Yeah.
So
because we're running into an enemy group that you just can't kill.
So my answer to your dilemma would be stop using kill objectives.
Or at least don't in that context.
Yeah, I just stopped.
Well, I mean, I would use kill objectives if you're going to if it's an enemy that you have a reason to spawn at that time, because it just kind of like doesn't make sense plot-wise.
Yeah, because sometimes you want to spawn an enemy right when the kill objective activates.
Yeah, right. And we had that as an option, but for the situation I was running into is my final boss is sitting on Jimpok's throne, and there's this big threat he's supposed to be threatening, and I wanted him to jump off of it and come at the player. And I had to work it around.
Yeah, I have a way around that by doing using a complete all. So I have two objectives. One is the kill objective. One is probably a reach marker or something like that. So the secondary objective will drop the force field, but since the kill objective has already been active, since it ran in parallel with the reach marker.
That's a good idea.
So yeah, I would do it very similar to that. I would make the objective something like take back the throne for Gempok or whatever kind of thing, and make the objective interacting with the chair, and then surround the chair with invisible walls that don't go away until you kill the bad guy. But don't make the bad guy a kill objective. Just you have to kill him before you can interact with the throne. So he effectively is a kill objective that doesn't use that objective.
Well, I couldn't do that, unfortunately, because the throne's built into the map. But what I did
You
was
could
I
stick a
ultimately...
little object inside it or something, or just below it, like a martini glass.
Yeah, I thought about that. What I ended up doing was I ended up having him, because I wanted it to be a gauntlet, so I just had his guards not be kill objectives, have him be the kill objective, have that from the start, and then so while you're killing the other guys, he's still sitting there behind his invisible wall.
Until you get close to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on.
Excellent. Well, while we're on the subject of requests, I want to talk a little bit about sort of an observation I've had. It seems to me that when new authors come to the official forum to ask a question, when they're building their first missions, their first forum post down in the Foundry section, a lot of the time, and I really mean a lot of the time, the question is, how do I make branching objectives? One just popped up this morning. As experienced Foundry authors, we know that this is not supported by the Foundry, but there are some ways to sort of work around it and fake it and that sort of thing. But they're very complicated and probably not something a first-time author should attempt unless they're like Dragoon, who one of those people who spent like a year tinkering before they actually sat down to make a mission. So here's my question. I mean, given that this comes up so often from new authors, I mean, is this the most requested feature for the Foundry?
Yeah,
Hands down,
possibly.
yes.
So I think it might be, and I mean, maybe that doesn't have any effect on anything, but I'm curious because it seems like it is.
I don't know if it's currently the most requested, but I could see every author I know finding a use for this, and yeah, it might be.
It's funny to me because this is something that is almost nowhere in the game proper. We don't have branching objectives with a couple of minor exceptions. Cryptic missions are very, very linear.
Yeah, and I think that has generally been their choice because that if they branch too much, then that's all the more story they have to write. They have to write an entire second branch of a story.
Well, I mean, just look at Step Between the Stars. I mean, that's probably the best current example of branching in a cryptic mission.
Yeah, Rogue is agreeing with us in the chat room. It is something that even the core game, the main gameplay, doesn't do. There's not really branching objectives, so the fact that we figured out ways to work around it, yay!
And it's the fact that so many people want it is interesting to me because I imagine we're coming from a lot of people who have played a lot of like BioWare games where branching objectives, branching dialogue, lots of choice is like the norm and built in.
Yeah,
but it's just not in stone.
I think it's a combination. I think it's a combination of that and the fact that branching objectives are just something that storytellers telling a gameplay sort of thing want to do. We want to give people choices.
Exactly, and I think specifically, I know why Crypto doesn't do it, which is they like you pointed out, they have a story to tell, and if they make the branches deviate, for instance, take a look at the end of the Nimbus arc, the choice of being able to kill or save Hassan. Well, has Hassan shown up since then? No, because they've left that. Now they don't know what your character chose. So branching objectives don't make sense in the main game. For the Foundry, it makes sense because we're not bound to necessarily have to go by Stowe Canon. Ashkrick has a mission. His Perfection series is an alternate reality. We don't necessarily have to be confined by that. So they may not have just developed the tech for themselves because they don't have a need for it really. Whereas we're the ones who genuinely need it, but there's not enough. Again, the cost effectiveness of the Foundry is getting in the way.
Thing. Yeah, cost effectiveness of the tool, and I think using the word that we need it is kind of a stretch. We all really want it,
Yeah,
because it
it's
would
not a
be
need.
very
I mean, you can
cool.
make good
But
missions
there are
without it.
thousands of story-based missions out there that are super cool that have been made without it. So I don't know that we need it. I just think it would be super cool.
The closest I think I've gotten to is I've just decided I'm going to instead put branching dialogue options. You know, if you're a Klingon, here's an option for you. If you're a Frost, here's one
Yep.
for you. And make that the kind of the branching you get, so that you're role playing your character, and then the actions you actually take with shooting down enemies and stuff is all fixed.
Well,
Mhm.
one thing that has occurred to me while we've been thinking about this is that the amount of clamor on the forums, I guess, is possibly an inspiration for the devs to start writing missions with branching objectives. I mean, because like I said, they did it in Step Between the Stars, and all of the missions that they've done that way are relatively recent.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna say Step Between the Stars is a very, very, very minor branch, and really, it's more of a physical branch than it is a story branch.
This
Yeah,
is true,
you
but
go to room A or room B. It both take you to room C.
Yeah. So in a way,
Yeah,
they kind of
but still.
did the same thing a Foundry author would, is that we kind of split the paths, and we use a little bit of trickery to handle both, but we still have to get you back to the same finish line.
Because that's just simply how Cryptic has chosen to build their game, is that you have to go from map to map to map to map instead of branching to different maps.
But here's a question. I mean, can anyone think of an MMO that does like serious branching?
No,
No.
Depends on how serious you mean.
Serious enough that there's a different outcome.
Well, I'm not sure how different the outcomes are, but in the Old Republic, you do a lot of branching, especially given your dialogue choices and your alignment. Dark or light really changes some things. And I've got some characters that are of the same class going up that are, one is dark side aligned, one is light side aligned, and they're getting towards the end. So I'm curious to see how different the endings are.
But see here, that's the difference. And STO does not have a definitive ending right now, whereas a single player game, it ends eventually. So you
It's
can
true.
write and plan that all out. And they can't do that.
Yeah. Something that I think Cryptic does have that would help us a lot in branching is optional objectives.
Yeah, we'd love to have actual, honest to God, optional objectives that we could make.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Oh,
And of course, the other thing that I think Greendragoon, you brought this up when we were chatting about this on Twitter a few weeks ago, is quest objects can help with this.
Yes.
If you get, put a quest object in, if the player finds it and picks it up, they can go to X part of the map. If they don't find it, they can't go there. Things like that.
Yeah, I mean, devs, I know it seems like this weird little thing, and like items can't be that big of a thing, but the ability to take something with us between maps that allows us to tell if something happened before. It's literally like physical variables to us.
So,
You know what?
so
I
on
would
map,
Guys, I have 2-minute old breaking news.
go for
I'm
it.
not
that
kidding.
Uh-oh.
2-minute old breaking news.
Go for it.
So last week I was like, hey everyone, by next week, if we haven't seen some kind of word on the official Foundry challenge, I've been talking to another former winner. This was P. Sutherland, and I were looking at, he already had a lockbox ship and some other cool gear, and I was looking at purchasing one of the more requested lockbox ships, like one of the ones that people really want, kind of thing. And we were gonna do do some kind of challenge and like email Brandon and Smirk. And so 2 minutes ago, now 3 minutes ago, the following was posted on the We Want a New Foundry Challenge thread on the forums from Captain Smirk. It says, guess what? Now that we have this whiteout bug fixed, we'll be bringing back the new Foundry Challenge next Wednesday. And it will definitely be a player suggested topic. So start adding entry ideas here, and I will pick one before next week. Countdown begins now. Thanks for your patience and good luck with submissions.
We should
Yay,
say
Captain Smirk.
when he says add the ideas here, this is the thread that's called Next Foundry Challenge, question mark, question mark, question mark.
Question mark, question
And
mark, question mark. So anyone who has suggestions starting now, even if you put the suggestion in there previously of,
Might as well say it
universe
again.
or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah,
might as
see?
well say it again. Follow post number 50, which is cool that it's a nice round numbered post of things. So there you go, everybody who was looking forward to it. We have the official word from the people at Cryptic. It's coming back. He'll announce it next Wednesday. So the countdown begins. I know I'm super looking forward to it. So get out there and make your suggestions, people.
So
Sorry to
so with
interrupt our
that,
topic.
no, we can move on. We've covered that other one pretty good. So with that, I mean, what are your guys' topic suggestions?
Hmm.
What do you think?
think about
For a
that.
Foundry challenge?
Yeah, what would you like to see?
I'm gonna
Really
go with
mirror
Shameless.
universe.
I know that Sutherland is would probably say on the forums would probably suggest a mirror universe challenge, which you know what I think would be fun. I think it would be a fun challenge.
Absolutely.
My personal idea for a challenge, I would love to see a challenge where the authors were challenged with the following words: to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before. That would be, I think, a great Foundry challenge, personally.
Does
But
it,
that
does it
reminds me a
count?
lot of Foundry Challenge 4. I mean,
What
it's
was?
not
I
the
don't
same,
remember that one.
but
I don't
Foundry
either.
Challenge 4, the hook was your crew makes a discovery that will change the way you look at the stars forever.
Interesting. I think
Yeah.
what Hippie's talking about is sort of getting back to that core of exploration, being
Yeah,
out
it really
there, out
is.
there in the fringes, encountering new species. Things like
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of what it was.
Seems I had a
That's kind of my idea, is go back to whatever those words mean to you as an author, because that's kind of the core of Trek to me.
I just kind of posted the suggestion of a Foundry challenge where the author had to remaster an existing cryptic mission.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think he's going for that one. Sorry.
They may not go for it, but I think it's fun.
They definitely won't go for it, and I don't think we could even do it now since we haven't gotten any of the origin assets.
Could remaster a mission without the origin. Does?
Yes, Relum, my idea is very Star Trek. I'm sorry. I love this. I love the idea of the show.
There
What
can't
it-
be
what it all
Star Trek
stems
in this
from.
game.
I
Are you
know.
crazy?
Who thought of such things?
Of course, my idea, which I did post in that thread before, and I'll reiterate it for Smirk there, is to do a bottle show.
I love that one too.
One that takes place entirely within the player's ship.
That would be
I love
so
that one,
hard.
too.
Yeah,
really hard.
I think it'd be fine.
So worth it.
That being
Really
said, like
hard. So worth it.
the entire first half of Midas Part 2 takes place entirely on the player's ship.
You know what? The only
I
problem I
think you did
see
a
with
good job
that,
of that.
the only issue I really see with those bottle show things is every character, because I think we all think of our bridge crew, our bridge officers, as the stars. So unless we're coming in with like our own Reginald Barkley, like however it did with Helma, we're kind of having to write a whole new crew member for your crew ship.
Well, yeah, I absolutely would. Is write junior officers.
A bottle
for
show.
lot of
A bottle
parts.
show has an extra level of difficulty for sure.
Mhm.
It does
Like,
have.
I mean,
Right.
my thought-
Hey, it's
does your
supposed to
crew
be a
have an
challenge.
equivalent of Lon Suitor?
Yeah, you have a murderer in your crew, or my thought is, one of my favorite TNG episodes is Lower Decks, where
Right.
you meet and interact with a lot of these junior officers.
Actually, Jorgen, that's a great idea, is to do a mystery.
Yeah,
You know,
a mystery would be good.
actually I was just thinking about the bottle show thing. You know what faction would actually benefit from that? The Romulan characters, because we can pretty much say that at least most people probably have had those first 4 buffs on their crew. We've had some character development for, beyond Tovin. We've also had Satra and Hyven and Veril. We could probably do a Romulan bottle
There was
show.
another one, right?
Yeah, Devex, yeah, who's from the
Yeah.
colony. So there's Romulan bottle show. It's definitely much more doable.
Could be a good one.
Yeah,
Just
the weird thing
Romulan
with
missions
the
in
Vex
general.
is you don't get him until at the end of the story instead of getting him at the beginning with the others.
And that's because you rescue him from the Alachi.
True.
Yep. And then another one I had, another idea I had a long time ago was you meet a duty officer in the hall one day and you get to talking and somehow it takes you on a grand adventure.
Why do I see that ending on Rice
There's so
very
many
badly?
there's so many weird duty officers that we have. Like what is it, the Farasan, whose name is comes out occasionally from the random name generator as a word that would cause Greendragoon to have to edit things.
Actually, there is actually a Farasan duty officer I wanted to work into my series, but I couldn't do it. One of the rare ones is a Patriarch. How did a Farasan Patriarch end up as a lower deck character on the Klingon crew?
Or what was that bridge officer that you got today, Mark?
Her name was spelled A-A-A-U.
Oh.
Oh.
There needs to be a story behind that. But yeah,
You know
the idea would be just, pick a DOF from your roster. And, the first map is, you meet them in a hall one day and get to talking and they lead you on a just grand adventure.
You know what characters I always thought would be interesting to do? The Tholian duty officers. Because how are they living on your ship for the most part? I mean, are they in their EVA suit this time and we've built special quarters for them?
I'm going with yes.
Well, we do have Tholian NPCs now, not just the combat groups.
Yeah.
So that could be doable.
Although technically we've already done a Tholian Foundry challenge.
True. But if it was a duty officer challenge, it would be your choice.
Yeah, I think there's a lot you could do there. You could probably, the Hortus could probably be the only other crew members who could actually go and hang out with them in their quarters.
I'm not sure Horta liked temperatures that hot.
I can't remember if they were high temperature or not, the Hortus.
Yeah, I don't.
Rock, the Tholians aren't living in 2,000 degree weather. It's 200. It probably does nothing to the Horta.
Yeah, true.
There was that idea I had a while back that got Hippie going on a mission of doing a mission about a minor NPC on a social zone.
Okay, so I still have that. I have the script for it. I know where it ends. The problem is part 2 is giving me trouble, and the Foundry reviewer that I don't know people might know. I know he listens to our show. I don't think he gets to listen to it live, but Chivalry Bean, who reviews Foundry missions on Priority 1, and they're always fun. He does really fun mission reviews, is all I'm saying. And he would love to work with me in providing a Federation viewpoint to this idea of exploring the Klingon and Federation war a little bit. So the ideas for part 2 aren't coagulating in my mind fast enough. So once they start to, I'll get back in touch with him. But I'm still stuck on that idea, and you gave me such a great character, Dragoon. So I still think someone should run that as I'm challenging you to do this, and here, have a weird character.
Maybe I'll post that up as a suggestion, and then include a handful of different NPCs for each faction.
Mm-hmm. I think me and several other people have built some stories around Sarki in Starfleet Academy.
That's a great like minor character that you never run into in the real missions.
Yep.
He's just sitting in there as someone you can talk to.
Yeah,
My thought
I'm
is he's a highly placed counterintelligence operative with Starfleet intelligence.
There was at a compa outside of a Quinn's office.
Yep.
His
Yeah,
secretary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Linnea.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question that's been brought up many times. Is so what level of actual interaction does the Federation have with the civilizations of the Delta Quadrant?
Well,
Because
if I remember,
there
if I
are
remember,
DOS missions for talking to Talaxian diplomats.
Yep.
Well,
There's got to be some.
there's some lore, and I forget where it is. I think it's from the preview stuff to the Delta to the Dyson Sphere, where they mentioned they've got a few ships that transwarp out to the Delta Quadrant on occasion.
Oh yeah, you're talking about the Callisto.
Yeah, the Callisto, and so there's probably a few of them that go out that far, and they don't spend. I get the impression that they go out there, they spend a few years out there on deep space reconnaissance, and then warp back. And since we've got transwarp technology now and quantum slipstream, I'm assuming that they can just. I assume even if the slipstreams are unstable as it was on Voyager, you just kind of do it in jumps, go for a couple of few 100,000 light years, and keep going and going.
Well. I mean, I would imagine it working like the player slipstreams do, where you turn it on, you fly a few light years, you fly a few without it, you turn it back on.
Yeah, pretty much. And we're covering like what, an area of space that's like 100 square light years for the Federation or something like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't read too much
maybe
into
so.
that because they have
Well, not the Stowe one. I'm talking like in the expanded universe, the maps. It's like 100 to 200 square light years for the Federation.
Well,
So
the actual full width of the Federation may actually be as much as 1,000 light years. The most far-flung reaches of it.
yeah, it's not.
I don't remember exactly.
There are some weird tendrils to the Federation.
I mean, because some of
If you have the star charts thing put together by Larry Nemeczek, yeah, it's interesting.
yeah,
I mean,
It sort of wraps around and snakes through different places.
Yeah, it's more because
which is actually
sorry, the non-Federation cultures on the star charts tend to end up as round blobs with the Federation oozing around them.
Yeah, exactly.
which I actually think would be interesting for that KDF war mission, because some of those systems have now been taken back by the Klingons, and the Klingons now have the Gorn, who are out on the galactic rim. So that empire has kind of taken a huge chunk of the Federation away. So there's this story idea right there.
Well, also, so some of these regions, while nominally claimed by the Federation, may or may not actually be under Federation control. I mean, like the Briar Patch is a classic example. As has been brought up in several discussions on the forums, the Federation did not ever actually have a valid territorial claim to the Briar Patch. Their claim was based on the fact that they didn't know that anyone lived there.
that's
True,
assuming
and
that
then
no sort of relations opened up with the Baku after insurrection.
I totally think the Admiral was right. We should have gotten rid of those space elves and taken the medical tech.
But no, I mean that I was kind of wondering about that because I was playing through Step Between the Stars and got to wondering because Jarrett is a former Federation colony, and yet for some reason now it's in Romulan Republic space. Did we concede territory to them?
Well, it's actually in the blue areas. If you look, if you look at it.
Yeah,
and it's also
part
mentioned,
of Taudewa is Federation territory.
but
it's
all of
mentioned,
the Romulan Republic is claiming jurisdiction because the gate is located there.
well, yeah, but if you read the little pop-up for the Jarrett system itself, when it was just like a random go kill X enemies for reputation marks, they mentioned the Federation kept trying to rebuild the colony, but it kept failing, and they just handed it over to Romulan and was like, you do whatever you want with it.
Okay, so we did concede it to them.
Yeah, we did concede it to them, but
Give them
from
a
what
half the world, I guess.
Yeah, I think the only territory that's really Federation in that zone anymore is the Star Base.
Yes,
And
which
I
is
think that's
closer to
only
New Romulus than the Juret system. I don't
Yeah,
know.
well, that's because that's where the old neutral zone was. And now with the Romulan Republic kind of rebuilding, they're probably just giving away those planets, saying, "Look, I mean, Kittimer's Klingon, uh, and some of the lower ones in that region, but most of the rest of the systems have pretty clearly have been kind of in disputed territory for a while. So it's just been kind of like, oh, Durret system, we kept trying to rebuild after the Borg attack, it never took. You guys can have it. I mean, it's just not working for us anymore. And since we're allies, hey, we can travel through your space anyways. It doesn't bother us."
So we're kind of coming up to our time limit here, and I just want to end with this. There was an interesting discussion I noticed a couple days ago over on the Guild Wars 2 forums. The devs were requesting proposals for how to improve or add to one of their dungeons called Fractals of the Mist, which is, if you're unfamiliar with it, is like a series of mini dungeons. And a couple people brought up user-generated content as a way to expand the dungeon. Chris Whiteside, the studio design director, wrote back that he thought it was a cool idea, but said rewards would be an interesting problem, which kind of makes me think that there will never be a UGC system in a MMO that doesn't have issues with rewards. If that's the first thing he thought of.
Well, this is I mentioned this on a post show like a couple of weeks back. I think the issue with the farming that we're having in the Foundry could be solved. Pluck out those drops and just give us a flat reward for playing a qualified mission.
Which is
Well,
what it
I wonder if they're
used
moving
to
towards
be.
that with, they dequalified some of the, quote, grinder missions. And they're instituting a rewards weekend for missions that qualify.
Yeah, wow. I mean, they can't be any more so. I didn't know how to say it, but you're so right. They couldn't be any more clear in saying we don't think grinders are worth rewards.
Well, we
They
should
couldn't
point
be
out.
clearer.
And they're saying, maybe they're saying you can get your drops, that's fine, have fun, but we're rewarding these other missions.
We should point out. I mean, do we
bingo.
ever find any common thread between the particular missions that were de-qualified?
I believe they were those loot missions where you just go
Yeah.
kill a bunch of things and
The
get
common
loot.
thread, the common thread is what
Seems like.
that was the
Was a
thing that was breaking the reward curve. So when they disqualify something, or when I have seen them actually work on one of the exploits, it's when that exploit breaks the reward curve in such a way that it creates an imbalance or an unfairity within the game. And obviously the people who are working on the game at the level of being the cryptic employees understand that every piece of the economy connects together. That means that even someone's energy credits, as small as it is, and as many steps removed from someone's real wallet that it is, the fact that energy credits can eventually make their way to Zen, and back and forth, means that when that reward curve is being broken, they eventually have to deal with it. And that is the missions that got disqualified, is the ones that were, it's no longer as appealing to play those missions where you just sit there and get tons of drops, because that's all you get now.
And there's
You get
no
nothing
no
else.
dilithium at the end of it.
So what I see is, the reason I say it's very clear they're saying exploits are bad and K is they disqualify the missions that are exploiting and breaking the reward curve, and then they follow
I think
with,
we lost you.
you guys lost me?
No, we still have you.
I can still hear it.
Okay. I was going to say, they disqualify the missions that break the reward curve, and then they offer a Foundry reward weekend where missions that do qualify for the rewards still give you a, a box that you can get fleet marks out of, which is the most requested thing in the game right now. It couldn't be clearer that they're saying, to me anyway, it couldn't be clearer that they're
Wait,
going,
sorry.
exploits are bad. bad, bad, bad. They're shaking their finger at people that make exploits right now, and I love it. I love it.
Well, the other thing that came out of this discussion on Guild Wars 2 is that one person specifically cited the Foundry for Neverwinter, and then he asked how much effort it would take to get something like that for Guild Wars 2, and Mr. Whiteside wrote back and said lots and lots of effort, which makes me actually very, very grateful that, you know, the devs here on Stowe went through that effort to give us this tool. You know,
I mean,
we might think it's incomplete. Yeah. We might think, you know, there could be lots of improvements made. It might have bugs, but we have it. It's there. It works.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it before. Foundry is definitely one of the areas Cryptic has gotten ahead of the curve.
Mm-hmm. And they may have, and you know, as we know, they kind of had ulterior motives in making it for Stowe, which is in that they wanted to develop it for Neverwinter. But still, we've got it, and it's awesome. It's unique, nearly. So it just makes me grateful that the devs went to the effort to develop this tool when they, you know, it just wasn't something that was in the game initially.
I'd say it before and I'll say it again. I mean, Stowe has something that SWTOR doesn't have, Guild Wars, any version of Guild Wars doesn't have, and it's something to be proud of. I mean, lots of games have PvP, lots of games have story, lots of games have in-game loot, but
only 2 games have the Foundry, and we're one of them.
Mm-hmm. At least until EverQuest Next comes along.
They don't have what they're giving people is not a Foundry. I mean, they're going to try to come close, but it's not the same.
It's a different animal, as we were talking about last time, and we still don't know a lot about it.
Yeah, but yeah, it's definitely
we'll be watching
trend.
that one for sure. But you know, we'll say that.
I know I've said it before, but it still surprises me that Blizzard hasn't done something along the lines of their StarCraft mission editor for World of Warcraft. I really don't understand why they haven't done that, but they haven't. I don't get it.
I think at this point they realize they can just make some content and they'll get a metric ton of money and don't care anymore.
Yeah, I don't think they'll put something of that like that in Warcraft ever. I think if something were to show up, it would be in a new game.
Well, we'll see. We'll have to, you know, we always keep an eye on new games coming out and see if there's any sort of UGC going on in them.
Yeah.
But that'll do it for us tonight, folks. So
think so. Yeah.
Say goodnight to everybody out there.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.